physio. You know, I remember I got referred to a physio. I think I paid privately for loads of physio sessions, limited use. Again, I'm not here to have a go at physiotherapy. I'm just saying for me, it was, you know, I was doing some strengthening exercises.
But was the pain coming and going? Was it turning on? Was it turning off? Was it there constantly?
I don't think it was there all the time.
Yeah.
I think I would just have an awareness of it. If I sat down for too long, I think I'd feel it. At some point in that journey, I think, I don't know when that was. It was probably, I don't know, something like 1999, 2000, something like that. I moved back to the northwest of England from Edinburgh in 2003 to help look after my dad. And I was having real problems. Like I was a junior doctor at the time. I was really struggling sometimes with the long ward rounds, and my back was really bothering me. I had to take time off. And I think I once went to my GP and they referred me for an MRI scan. Or I actually think it was at the hospital I worked. I got an MRI scan there. And this is the first time, and I give the spinal surgeon who had the consultation with me a huge amount of credit for this. This would have been back around 2003, 2004. There was a disc abnormality on my MRI scan, and I would have been, you know, in my mid-20s, something like that. And he said to me, yes, you have a disc abnormality, L4, L5, but you've got to understand that I could take 100 people off the street and your age, do an MRI scan on them. A lot of them would have the same scan as you, and most of them would have no pain at all. So to be fair to him, back then, he was basically saying, this is a static scan. This simply cannot tell me if you have the pain. So I've got other things to share, but any comments so far?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the data of these MRIs being abnormal in normal people goes back to the 1980s. So it's not really all that new. It's been compiling over the years. But the thing is that what happened at that initial moment? You might have twisted your back. You might have had a back injury due to lifting improperly or whatever. Or your brain might have said, you know, it's been a long day, Rangan. You've been working really hard. Maybe this guy's not really appreciative. Maybe he's got too many boxes. Maybe they're too heavy. You know, there's a certain amount of stress going on, and your brain might have said, time out, you know, you got to stop doing this. And your brain can't talk to you. It doesn't speak English. It can only speak in some kind of message, so it might have sent a pain. So in either case, the point is you had pain in your lower back at that moment. And then you did the appropriate thing. You rested, and then you didn't stress out about it too much, and you didn't use your body too much. But then you gradually started to get back into action. And if it was an injury, it had healed. Because all injuries heal. And so if it's an injury, it healed, and then you would be fine, unless the neural circuit for that pain continued. And what causes a neural circuit for pain to become chronic or to continue? It's that memory of it. It's the fear of it. Next time you go to lift something, there's a little subconscious reaction going on in your brain there. Uh-oh, be careful, don't lift. You might get pain again. And then that actually can cause that neural circuit to turn on pain.
Yeah.
And then it can enlarge not just to lifting, but to other stressful situations like being on rounds for a long time, standing up for a long time, sitting for a long time.
Yeah.
These can all become conditioned responses. And so the chance that, you know, you may have a little muscle pull or something minor like that, but that healed.
Yeah.
And then what happened is the pain became chronic because those neural circuits got activated and then reinforced over time.
It's so interesting looking back at that now with fresh eyes, with someone like you sitting in front of me. Because bit by bit, it became chronic and it would affect how I felt about myself. I would become fearful. Oh, I can't help anyone move. I can't lift the sofa. And then again, the narrative, you know, you're 6'7", you're really tall. Of course you're going to have back pain. But there was a deep part within me, Howard, who thought, that's just nonsense, right? I do not have to be committed to a life of backache in my mid-20s because I'm, mega tall. I just refused to accept that. I thought there's something going on here. I'm going to find the way to heal this. I'm not accepting that.
Yeah.
And I won't go into the whole story necessarily, but there's two specific things I wanted to share with you. One is that on this journey, I, like many people, spend a lot of money on different therapies because this is just, I can't play squash anymore. I can't sit for long periods of time. I can't drive for more than an hour. Like all this kind of stuff was real. And for me, it was like, oh, it's because you're tall. You look at your posture, you look at all these things. And again, I'm not saying they have no value ever, but I found this guy, it was a ski video actually, this chap called Gary Ward, who I've written about. He's an incredible guy in terms of biomechanics. And I went to see him, I went to study with him. And he was basically saying to me that my right foot at the time was flat. And he said, Rangan, I don't feel and this is not exactly what he said word for word, but essentially that your right foot is stuck in pronation. It's not, I think we can help that right foot get better. He gave me some 5-minute exercise to get my right foot going. And literally instantaneously, I felt relief in my lower back. And that continued for years. So I could get back to squash. I could get back to long drives. I'd still have tightness. It would still come back from various times, but that made a huge difference. So I felt I got my quality of life back. But even though it was significantly better, it was still there. Sure. It would still come on at times of stress, I would notice.
Yeah.
Now,
see, now you're getting to the heart of it.
Now I'm getting to the heart of it because when I got the deep realization, so just a quick overview. When I was in second or third year at medical school, my dad became seriously ill with lupus. His kidneys failed. So he was 15 years on kidney dialysis. That's why I moved back in 2003 to the Northwest. That's why I live where I live today, because I was helping my mum and my brother look after dad for many years. Now, at my dad's funeral in 2013, so context again, my back had been good for a few years. I'd been back to doing stuff, playing squash, back to the stuff I wanted to do in my life. But I'd still feel it. Now, this moment, my dad was cremated, and I can still remember wearing my suit. At the end of the service, I remember my dad's coffin. I could see it being brought out, and it went into I don't know the official term, like the oven.
Yeah.
I saw the door open. I saw the orange of the heat.
The flames.
And I am not kidding you, right? I can almost feel it now as I say it to you. As my dad's coffin went into the oven, I could feel my back ease off.
Wow.
And I was like, I know that just happened. I wasn't thinking about it. It wasn't like I was planning for this to happen. And I thought about that. And I thought, oh my God, this is the weight of looking after my father. I honestly felt, as I analyzed it afterwards, oh wow, in that moment where you knew that dad was literally going to be gone, but because his body's about to be burnt, there is no more dad.
Yeah.
On some deep level, it was like, I knew I no longer need to care and take on that weight.
Well, you had fulfilled your obligation. You came here to do what you needed to do. And it was a great gift to your father and your family. And it was a great gift to you as a son. And it was a beautiful thing. But it was a hard thing. And you did it for many years. And when at that moment you realize I've fulfilled my obligation, I've done it. And you can relax to that degree. And that's what happened in your back. Emotions matter. Emotions are real. We are psychological human beings. And the connections between emotions and our physical body are very real. These are neural circuits that get ingrained, get built in, get activated, get turned on and off. And I just think it's a beautiful process to understand, because when we can understand that, we can understand ourselves and the people we love and care about. And as doctors, we can understand our patients, and people can understand that the symptoms they're getting in their bodies sometimes are really just a message. They're a message from our brain telling us something, but we have to interpret it. And oftentimes, and this is really hard for some people to hear, but oftentimes they're a blessing in disguise. They're pointing us towards something that we need to do or we need to take care of. If you're in a situation in your life which is difficult and overwhelming, you need to change your job or change a spouse or change your relationship or set some boundaries or do something in your life, you may be having headaches or stomach pain or chest pain or back pain.
Yeah.
And you have no idea why, but if you look deeply and you are open to understanding these simple concepts, you can see it, and it's very real.
You're touching on a concept that often comes up on this show. And I say this with compassion, with, I hope, a great deal of sensitivity. But many people have shared with me, when the mics are running, if they have got through to the other side of something, they'll say, my disease was the best thing that happened to me. My cancer was my greatest teacher. And again, these are people who have got through to the other side. So I understand if you've had cancer and you've had real problems with it, and or someone's had a friend or a family member who's died from cancer. I understand that. I'm not trying to in any way invalidate that.
Of course.
But what you're really speaking to for me is this idea that our pain, our chronic pain, is a signal. And if we can get to the root cause of what that signal is, the learnings we're going to get from that will not only help our pain, but it will help every other aspect of our life as well.
The pain is not the problem, it's the solution. What a weird thing to say. It's the solution that our brain has come up with to alert us to a problem. It's a signal, it's a message, and it's a protector. It's a guide. Your brain is saying, like, look, I'm worried about you, There's all this stuff going on. I'm worried about you. There's something wrong. There's something amiss. And here's a signal for you to stop doing what you're doing, stop and think, stop and evaluate, whatever the message is. And oftentimes, I remember there was a woman, I was on a video call with a bunch of people. A young woman was having neck pain. And it had started when she was in her university days. And I just asked her to close her eyes and put her hand over her heart and think about that person who was her, 8 or 10 years ago, whatever it was. And think about what that person, what she needed, what she was going through, what was happening in her life at the time that the neck pain started. And she just started to cry, because she felt compassion for herself. A lot of people have trouble with that, right? She felt compassion for herself at that age and what she was going through and how much pressure she was putting on herself and how hard she was working and other things that were going on in her life. And all of a sudden, it made sense to her why she got the neck pain at that time. And what happened as she started to cry, as she had her hand over her heart, as she was turning those tears into compassion for herself, neck pain disappeared. Just like that. It's amazing.
You mentioned that it's important to properly evaluate a patient who's suffering with chronic pain because, of course, there might be a structural component that is amenable to some sort of treatment.
Yes, of course.
And, related to that, you mentioned the brain is what creates the pain. Do we need to sort of outline what happens, right? What happens when we touch a hot stove? Is it worth us kind of unpicking that to help people understand that?
Yeah, for sure. The signals that go to the brain go up through the peripheral nervous system, through the spinal cord, into the brain, into several centers of the brain. And the different centers of the brain have different functions, somatosensory centers and emotional centers and thought centers and memory centers. All those things are activated when you get these kinds of nerve signals coming up to the brain. And there's an immediate, and this is all subconscious. You're not thinking like, oh, I hit myself. Oh, should I get pain or not? You can't think that. Mm-hmm. It's not a conscious process. It's all happening on a subconscious level. And so most of the time when you have an injury, the brain will immediately turn on that pain as a signal. Just stop. Stop doing what you're doing. Get help. Swear. Do whatever you have to do to take care of yourself. So that's what happens in an acute injury. But sometimes those signals are overridden. In an acute injury, the brain may not activate pain because there's something else going on. I like to say if you're running across the field and you break an ankle, you're likely to get pain. If you're running across the field and break an ankle, but you're being chased by a lion, you probably wouldn't get pain in that situation. So there's a decision mode that's going on in the brain that can override that. The point is that injuries that occur that cause pain, which is almost all the time, those injuries heal because our body always heals. But what happens is that sometimes the danger signal of what's going on in people's lives is also activated through memory, through prior injuries, through stress that's going on in our life that can activate this danger signal to make the pain continue even though the injury heals. So we see this all the time. That's why I was asking you, what happened in the aftermath of hurting your back initially? Did the pain go away for a while and then it started coming back? Well, if the pain went away for a while and started coming back, chances are the injury healed. This makes sense. But the neural circuits had been learned by the brain and then had gotten activated. So the brain then learns, has this pathway that's sometimes becomes a default pathway of neural circuits that keeps turning on pain every time you wake up in the morning or every time you bend over as a conditioned response. And so then those neural circuits become activated sometimes all the time or coming and going or in whatever pattern occurs, but those neural circuits are real and they're causing real pain. But it's not because of the injury. So that's the critical thing that we and physicians and PTs and everyone need to understand, to look carefully, to really listen to people of what happened with the injury, what happened with the healing, and what is the history of the pain. Because if the pain is turning on and off, structurally, if you break your arm, the pain doesn't turn on and off.
Yeah.
If you go away on vacation, it goes away, and you come back to work, it comes back again. That's a neural circuit problem. If the pain is triggered by stress, if the pain is triggered by the wind or cold or the weather, there's all these signs and clues that we have as physicians and other professionals to listen to people intently and make sure that we've ruled out a structural problem. I'm a physician. We're both physicians. We know that the last thing we want to do is miss a tumor, miss an infection, miss an inflammatory condition, miss something. We desperately want to avoid doing that.
Yeah. As you say that, I think about irritable bowel syndrome. IBS, super, super common. And for years, it was that diagnosis of exclusion. Oh, well, you've got these problems, these stomach cramps, this constipation, this diarrhea, bloating, whatever it might be. But your scans are all fine. The bloods are all fine. Oh, you must have irritable bowel syndrome. But there's something inherently wrong with that sort of phraseology because we're not giving weight to the fact that, look, you've got really bad symptoms that are affecting the quality of your life. Now, from a physical standpoint, okay, we've ruled out the serious stuff. Okay, that's great news. But now we need to start digging into the emotional stuff. What's been going on in your life? We miss out that part. So the initial part happens, oh, there's nothing seriously wrong with you. But actually, that's very condescending because actually, what do you mean? You know, for many patients, it's like, what do you mean there's something physically wrong with me? I can't go to work. I have to open my bowels 20 times a day. It's awkward for me at work. It's socially embarrassing. But the doctor's saying there's nothing wrong with you. Do you know what I mean? So
Exactly.
I think this is such a big point. You said about if you're running across a field and you hurt your ankle, whether your brain decides to give you a pain signal is going to depend on the context. Right? I think that's really powerful. Like if the context is a lion is chasing you, your brain, which is always trying to predict the future based on the past, is going to be like, hey, we have no time for pain. I need you to keep running now. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you can stop, it might go, hey, listen, you know, let's give him pain so that he stops. Like, is that an oversimplification?
No, that's
Is that what happens?
That's exactly what happens. Yeah.
Compare that to endurance running, right? Or endurance events, because I think many people may be familiar with this experience of, I don't know, people always say like David Goggins, this former, I think, US Navy SEAL in America, who's known for doing all kinds of ultra endurance events. I think he has said something to the effect of, when you think you can't go on, you're not even 40% of the way there. In terms of you've got so much capacity left that you don't even know. No, I don't know if that's based on science or just his viewpoints, but I think that kind of fits in here.
Yeah, Tim Noakes is an exercise physiologist from South Africa, and he's written about this, and he calls it the governor. And there's a governor, and it's like up there. And at some point you're hitting the wall. At some point you're saying, "Oh, I can't go on." But it's a feeling. It's a protection. Again, the brain is protecting you. It's saying, like, hey, why are you doing that? You know, it's way too much. You know, you can't handle it. Everyone talks to themselves. All great athletes talk to themselves. But everyone talks to themselves. If you think you're not talking to yourself, you're the one who's crazy. Because we're always giving ourselves messages. And if we're saying to ourselves, oh, my back is always going to be bad, that's a message that's making the brain make it worse and worse over time. If you're saying to yourself, I can't handle this marathon, or I can't handle this 5K, or whatever, that message is going to affect how you feel and how tired you are and how much you can run. Literally will do that, because the brain has power over our muscles and over our sensations and over our feelings. That's just how the brain and the body work. And so if we can really understand, and great athletes understand it, they know, say, oh yeah, I know, I'm really tired. That's okay. I can handle this. And then they keep going.
It's just so fascinating to me. Another thing just came up there, Howard, from literally a few weeks ago. So I consider myself for many years now to not have a back problem. I will lift beds, sofas. I'm not limited in anything I do anymore because of my back. It was a long journey. I've shared with you some of the things in that journey: therapy, IFS, which we may talk about, and other things. This kind of holistic approach to my own healing has massively helped, I'm sure. Listeners of the show will know that I've spoken about my mum several times. Mum's quite elderly now. She's very immobile. She needs a lot of care. And sometimes she'll slip off the bed or have a fall. And maybe the carer, or often it's me or my brother, will go around and try and help Mum and get her back onto the bed or get onto her chair. Now, what's really interesting is, even though my back has been healed for years, usually before I'd lift Mum up, I would be thinking, oh man, I hope this doesn't strain my back. Oh man, I've got something important this weekend. I hope I don't pull my back. You know, there's this kind of almost self-fulfilling narrative before I do it. And invariably, the next day I'd feel a bit of tightness, and then it would go. And sometimes it would last a few days, and I'd be thinking, oh man, it's because I lifted Mum. Which kind of makes sense based upon the narratives that we pick up. But a few weeks ago, this is exactly what happened. I was in my kitchen. I got a call from my brother. It was about 5 p.m. And he says, hey, mate, are you around? So, like, Mum slips off the bed. I need some help. I said, is Mum okay? Is this an emergency? He goes, no, Mum's okay, but we need to get her up. Took a few deep breaths. And I thought, hey, Rangan, go round, don't show any stress, be totally calm. This is not a bad thing. I'm lucky that I live nearby. I can go and help my elderly mother now. Like I reframed the narrative in my head. This is my self-talk. So I went in, I said, hey, Mum, how you doing? Oh, you're sitting there on the side of your bed. You slipped off. And she had a little smile. She had a little giggle. Like in the past, I've gone around feeling quite anxious and quite stressed. So I intentionally went in. And then I thought, before I lifted Mum, I just said, hey, I'm a strong human. Honestly, this is what I said. I'm a strong, wild, resilient human. Lifting my Mum is no problem. And I went in with a big smile on my face, got Mum up, got her back into bed. Again, this is an N=1, Howard, right? I'm aware of that. But I'm sharing this because it really speaks to your experience. This was just a few weeks ago. I consider myself to no longer have back issues. But again, there's a memory. Oh, if I do this in an awkward position, it's going to cause a backache. But when I went in with complete stress-free, smiling on my face, telling myself I can handle this, no problem, I felt nothing. So that I think that speaks to what you just said.
So you just described what we would call pain reprocessing therapy. So when we treat people, if I can back up just a second.
Please do.
When we evaluate people, we're listening to their story. We're validating them. We're understanding them. We're looking at what symptoms they have and making sure there's not a structural problem. And we're listening to the symptoms they have and making sure that it is a neural circuit problem by the fact that it'll turn on, that it'll turn off, it'll shift, it'll move, it'll be triggered by innocuous things, it'll be inconsistent, a whole variety of criteria that we use and that were used in that back pain study that I described earlier. And then we'll look for any emotional stuff that might be going on or has gone on in their life that may have contributed to it. So we do all that. And then we decide, oh, this is a neural circuit problem. This is amenable to reversing by two types of solutions. And the one solution that we're calling pain reprocessing therapy, and the other type of solution that we're calling emotional awareness and expression therapy. So the first one dealing with the neural circuits in the brain directly, and the second one dealing with emotions. And in our Boulder back pain study, we evaluated, there were a randomized controlled trial. There were 45 people randomized to our arm of the study. Of the 45, I evaluated all of them. Of the 45, 43 had nothing wrong with their back. Structurally, nothing wrong. They had MRIs were abnormal, of course, but based on all of the history, as I described, this was a neural circuit problem, 43 out of the 45. The other two, I'm not 100% sure about, again, being cautious. And so and these people had an average duration of back pain of 10 years.
Wow.
Now, of those people, 44 were treated. Of those people, 33 were pain-free in 1 month. So 75% of the people we treated were pain-free after 10 years of back pain in 1 month, simply using what we're calling pain reprocessing therapy. And you just described it to a T.
Really?
Because what is pain reprocessing therapy? It's changing the narrative. It's thinking about yourself differently. It's thinking about the back differently. It's understanding why it's there. And it's understanding that it is a neural circuit. It's having hope that it's reversible because it is. And then it's as you go to lift or bend or move, you're telling yourself, I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm not in danger. And you're smiling. I mean, you did it. And when you smile and when you give your brain reassurances, you're turning off that danger alarm mechanism that is the actual cause of the pain. And so for these folks, we didn't go into emotional issues. We didn't go into their past. We didn't deal with their emotions at all. We just changed the narrative. And how powerful that was to have 75% of people pain-free in 1 month. I mean, it's amazing. There's never been a study with chronic back pain or any chronic pain that's shown that kind of result.
Yeah, that's incredible. 75% better after a 10-year history in 30 days.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And I hope that gives people listening and watching to this hope that actually, no matter how long you've been suffering, there may well be something you've not tried yet that could help. Now, again, Do you face much skepticism from people about this? What's the pushback? Where does that pushback come from? I know this is real because
it's massive.
Yeah, because I've also, I did that. I didn't know it was pain reprocessing therapy. I didn't know I was doing that on myself. I was just, based on everything I've learned, everything I've seen with patients, it's like, no, you don't need to have the same experience. You can change your experience of this same event. But yeah, where does the pushback come from?
Well, you did that because you felt that you could.
Yeah.
You were saying, I don't have a back problem. So that's step one. And then it's talking to yourself with this positive. I mean, it sounds silly to talk to yourself, give yourself affirmations. How stupid is that? But those have been shown in fMRI studies of the brain to change the brain.
Yeah.
Our brain is neuroplastic. And when you're giving yourself these positive messages, and then we use a graded exposure technique where you start to maybe move a little, or even imagine yourself moving with joy. Imagine yourself moving with a smile. Imagine yourself moving with these messages of safety. And we do this right in the office. And I've got videos of folks in my office where they're having pain with bending over, and then I have them imagine bending over, and then it hurts. And say, oh, you're imagining bending over, and it hurts. Your brain is afraid of you bending over. Oh, yeah, that's what's happening. And now tell yourself you're safe and you're not in danger, and smile and bend over 5 degrees and then 10 degrees. And pretty soon they're bending over because those neural circuits are changeable because it's not a structural problem. That's amazing that we see this happening on a oftentimes really quick basis. Not always, but oftentimes.
Yeah. It's interesting that as you were describing that, the name Eliud Kipchoge came to mind for me. Are you familiar with Eliud Kipchoge? He's a Kenyan marathon runner. He's from what we know, he's the fastest marathon runner of all time. With help from his sponsors and a lot of pacers, he actually broke 2 hours for running a marathon, maybe a year ago, something like that. But why that came to mind, even though I don't think Eliud talks about pain, describes pain. In fact, I'd love your comments on this. When he's running, because I was watching that sub 2 hour marathon race with my 2 kids, we were watching it on my computer. And at various times, he just starts smiling.
Yeah.
And I think I've heard him say in interviews that when he's really hurting, when there's pain, he smiles. He intentionally chooses to smile.
Yeah.
Now, again, he's not someone with, to my knowledge, a history of chronic pain, but it's the same idea, isn't it? He's kind of almost trying to battle or buffer the pain by changing his experience of it.
Yeah, if you're interested in running, the book by Chris McDougall called Born to Run is amazing.
I love it.
Amazing book. Not Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run.
A great album as well.
Yeah, right. And he talks about the research showing that the more structure the shoes, the shoe companies, the more structure they give, the more people have pain, as opposed to the less structure. And he talks about running with freedom and running with joy in that book, and how these ultra marathon runners from Mexico do it, really in the same way. And so it's amazing how powerful our mental experience is in determining how we function day to day in our lives. Now, is there pushback on this? It is massive. I mean, prepare yourself for letters and people, really, misunderstanding the idea of the pain being real, of the symptoms, of the suffering being real. And I've been there, and you've been there. When my mom was dying, I had, this horrible upper back and neck pain, and it just lasted and lasted and lasted. And when my dad was dying, I had leg pain shooting down my leg, and I still get pains now sometimes, even for no reason, that I'm walking around, or, I'm going to play golf, which is, supposed to be relaxing, but it's actually kind of frustrating and humbling. But the point is that this stuff that we're talking about is really misunderstood. And it's so easy to take it as it's all in your head, and you're making it up, and we're mean and cruel people. And on the other hand, the other extreme is that, oh yeah, you're incurable. There's nothing we can do because the chronic fatigue or the fibromyalgia or the irritable bowel or the back pain is totally, you're going to have to live with it the rest of your life. And what kind of message is that? So horrible. And so we're talking about a new way of dealing with these disorders, which are the major cause of disability worldwide, by far. The major cause of disability worldwide is chronic neck and back pain, headaches, anxiety, depression, irritable bowel, fibromyalgia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I think I heard you in an interview once say that the increasing prevalence of chronic pain has mirrored or certainly followed the increase in anxiety and depression in society.
100%. And there's a great study on that by Tim Brown from Berkeley. And he took, in the U.S., Berkeley, California, he took data, nationwide data on stress and anxiety in the country following 9/11, 2001. And you could see it rising up over those next couple of years. And then he took data in the country on back pain, and you saw it mirroring, rising up in the same, exactly the same. And then as the stress went down after a couple of years, I think it was, the back pain started to go down a little bit before. Back pain has doubled in the U.S. in the last 20 years. Backs haven't changed. Our backs haven't changed, but the rates, and we know anxiety and depression are soaring as well. And in this pandemic era, and the polarization era and the political era, everything is just getting worse because of the simple fact that our brain creates what we experience.
Tell me about repetitive strain injury, because as you said, back pain's going up, neck pain's going up, and much of the time it's put down to posture and the fact that we're looking at computers and phones and
exactly.
What's your view on that?
Yeah, there's a lot of research that's been done on posture, and the bottom line is posture matters, but not very much. If you're hunching over a computer, if you sit that way for a couple hours, your neck's going to be sore. Of course it's going to be sore. Everyone's neck is going to be sore with that. But it's not going to cause chronic pain unless something else is going on in your life. The fear of it, the worry about it, the newspaper articles about posture and sitting up straight and everything that's scaring you, plus the stress that's going on in your life. All that can feed into this. A repetitive strain injury with typing,
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we're typing. I mean, if you look at the actual effect of typing, you're moving, the fingers a little bit. Remember you're too young.
I remember typewriters. My mom had one.
Yeah. You had to, and people, mainly women, were in these positions of typing 8 hours a day on these things where you really had to bang on the keys. They didn't get repetitive strain injury. There was an epidemic of RSI in Australia in the 80s. It started rising, people talking more about it. This is very well documented, and people writing about it and doctors diagnosing it, and the rates just kept going up and up and up. And then finally the government said, what's going on? We're not paying for that. And all of a sudden the rate.
It makes me feel, is there an unintended consequence of doing this? I don't just mean with mental health, I mean with everything.
Yeah.
You want to raise awareness of things. You want to raise awareness that emotional pain, emotional things that we haven't processed can cause physical pain. But there is probably a sweet spot, whereas if we start talking about stuff too much, saying, that loads of people have got RSI, your posture and your computer's causing problems, you hear that more, that becomes your reality. There's a potential problem there, isn't there?
Well, there's been a long, long history, and there's a great book by Edward Shorter called From Paralysis to Fatigue, where he examines the history of psychogenic type illnesses over last 200 or 300 years. And he talks about how in different societies, different symptoms tend to arise as a cultural phenomenon. Right now, anxiety and depression are cultural phenomenon. young people. Look at the rates of anxiety and depression in teenagers now. The rates of back pain. There was a study recently where 1/3 of teenagers reported having back pain. And when I studied pediatrics and internal medicine. When I studied pediatrics, no teenagers had back pain. It was unheard of. If a kid had back pain, it was an emergency situation because there was some major problem. And so I have a friend who's from Iraq, is a physician, and he's here. We were talking, a great guy. I was saying, what was surprising about you when you came to the U.S. about medicine here? And he said, back pain. And I said, why is that? He said, well, people didn't have back pain in Iraq or Jordan where I practiced. It was very uncommon. People had stress, but their stress was manifest in different ways because culturally there were different outlets for it.
Sorry to interrupt. If you are enjoying this content, there's loads more just like it on my channel. So please do take a moment to press subscribe, hit the notification bell, and now back to the conversation.
And so when we think about these things on a societal level, and we think about how people are treated, how we treat each other, the thing that in longitudinal studies of people in workplaces and like factories, the people who are more likely to develop musculoskeletal pain, who are workers in a factory, are those who are being treated poorly by their management. And that's been shown, not how much work and physical activity they're doing,